Hey guys, so for this week's video I'm going to do a recommendations video and I'm titled them IREX, and this recommendation video is going to be about vampires because I'm a massive fan of vampire stuff. Like, I love it. I love witches and I love vampires, and it's like, oh, so good. So I'm going to recommend some books that feature vampires, and yeah. Okay, first book I'm going to recommend is The Vampire Diaries by L.J. Smith. And if you haven't heard about the Vampire Diaries, I'm going to let you know right now. It is about vampires. It contains it in the title. And it features a human girl called Elena Gilbert who starts off like writing her diary, which is called, that's why it's the Vampire Diaries. And her life as she's entering, I think it's her junior year of school, junior or senior year, I can't remember. And she's recounting as the day goes by, and on her first day back to school, after her parents had died, she ends up meeting a boy who turns out to be a vampire. His name is Stefan. And yeah, when she meets Stefan, she ends up meeting Damon, and she gets thrust into this whole other world with vampires and struggling with teen things like friends and enemies, and yeah, so it's a YA book, and it's really good. I've read all of them up to a certain point. Yeah, so alright, so next one I have for you is The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. And Anne Rice writes mostly about vampires, but she does have werewolves and she does have witches in her books as well. And the Vampire Chronicles are just all the vampire stories that she writes. So she writes for different vampires, which are featured in sometimes each other's books. And I started off by reading Interview with the Vampire, which introduces you to the character Lestat and Louis and all that stuff. So it's kind of hard because there's so many vampires in the books, but yeah, it's just the vampires, and it tells you their lives, how they were before they were vampires, how they became vampires, what happened soon afterwards, and then leading up to the point where they're kind of retelling the story. So it's really cool because you get to see the different lives of all the vampires in her series, and then some books feature just like take place during current times, and they're just featured in each other's books. So yeah. Okay, next book series I have for you is the Noble Dead series, written by, I'll link it somewhere. I'll write it down. And it's the first book in the series is called Vampire. So it deals with this girl who is a renowned vampire slayer, who goes through town selling her skills to kill the vampires in the town, which you find out early on isn't what it seems. And she decides, her and her partner decide, well, she decides mainly, her and her partner decide that they want to settle down and kind of give up the whole slaying vampire act for a bit. And she finds a place that she wants to be, to live. But the problem is that a trio of old dangerous vampires find out her true identity and go after her because they are scared of who she is. Next book series I have for you is the Chicagoland Vampire series. It's about a girl named Merritt who is attacked by a vampire who doesn't take too much from her, but she's still attacked by one, and she's saved by another vampire who scares that one off, and that vampire decides that he wants to turn her. So she goes from being a grad student to a vampire and ends up having to like live and fit in with these vampires, and the guy who turns her actually is in charge. It's like a super old vampire in charge of, like, I don't know, what do you want to call it? It's not really a school or something, but in charge of a bunch of vampires. So yeah, and then he kind of wants her, and she has to kind of deal with her new reality, and then the dynamics between her maker and herself. So yeah. Next book series I have for you is the Sookie Stackhouse. Well, actually it's the Southern Vampire Mysteries series. And the main character is Sookie Stackhouse, who is a Southern gal working as a waitress, living with her grandmother and her brother. Her parents are dead. She is a telepath of sorts. And her life changes when she meets a vampire, a super old vampire who ends up moving into a house across from hers, and his name is Bill Compton. And once she meets Bill Compton, she gets thrust into the vampire world and dynamics, and it's so good. And the Southern Vampire Mysteries, they do have like werewolves and shifters and all that stuff, but a lot of the books feature, I mean, all the books have vampires in them, and in the beginning it starts off with the vampires. So the last book I'm going to recommend, it's not really one book because it's like several short stories, part of a series kind of thing. And it's the Nightworld series by L.J. Smith, who also writes the Vampire Diaries. Well, in this series she has a lot of kind of like short, I don't know if they're really short stories, but a lot of stories that feature different characters, but as a whole they all impact each other. So I just have written down the ones that feature vampires, and the one that I first read was Huntress, and it's about a girl whose brother was taken when she was younger, and she grows up and decides to be a vampire slayer, and she encounters a vampire, and her thoughts start changing about things. So the Nightworld series has Secret Vampire, Daughters of Darkness, The Chosen, Soulmate, and Huntress, and those are the stories that feature mainly just about vampires. Yeah. Alright, so those are all the books that I have to recommend for you for now about vampires. Let me know in the comment section below what books would you recommend for vampire lovers. Yeah. I will mention in the down bar you'll find all the books I mentioned and all the stuff, all the links so you can find me. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!